This story was once told to me while sitting at the table at one of the holidays by my uncle, who has a wealth of life experience behind him. The fact is that when he was 25 years old, he got a job at a well-known transport company as a truck driver to transport various cargo from point to another point, so that all people have the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of civilization, such as food, clothing, equipment, and much more. Uncle Sasha repeatedly explained his decision by the fact that since his youth, he was attracted by the opportunity to travel completely free of charges, while receiving good money for a relatively small number of responsibilities. During his career, he saw a lot of interesting things: the sultry steppe, mountain ranges, and even impenetrable wild forests, such a kind of romance. However, not always and not everywhere everything went like clockwork, because often some minor breakdowns happened right on the highway, even attacks from road bandits, who brazenly tried to squeeze the truck along with the existing cargo. By the way, it was for these reasons that the transport company very soon decided to send 2 cars along the same route with a slight difference of 15 minutes so that the drivers could help each other in case of any troubles. He told us many incidents, but they were all black compared to one heartbreaking incident. According to him, one winter on a dammed section of the M5 highway, I decided to take a short vacation in order to rest a little and get my nerves in order. While telling me about this incident, Uncle Sasha was noticeably nervous but tried in every possible way to control himself. He forced me from the first words to completely believe in the veracity of this story. Perhaps the rest of the story will come from his point of view. I think it will be easier as I remember now this fateful order fell precisely. In December, in the southeastern part of the M5 highway Samara-Orsk, there was terrible ice and strong snowstorms, which in every possible way prevented our company from planning deliveries and product to a small town near Orenburg. Apart from this, they did not due to the weather conditions. Since the federal highway was open and the fact that no one was harassing, we did not simply want to risk our lives for the sake of some pieces of paper, because the path here was not close and quite dangerous. Then Edek, my best friend, and I, and part-time work colleague, were offered a double rate for this route. Our management's tongues hanging out, immediately agreed. We are already starting to slowly prepare for an unforgettable trip. The whole path from Samara to Orsk totaled exactly 693 kilometers. The ride was about 9 hours. Given the workload, we had to get up very early because by the evening of the next day, along with the goods, they were waiting for us at the final point of the route, safe and sound. In general, Edek and I were working long distance from the very beginning and always moved in the same tandem. I usually set off first, and only 15 minutes after me, he was the only entertainment on the road. We had my favorite music downloaded in advance, and conversations on the walkie-talkie on a separate frequency that did not give me an extra reason to fall asleep. What about ethics? Speaking about the walkie-talkie, this miracle device often saved our skins, and not only from traffic cops hiding in the bushes, but also from all sorts of arrogant road traffickers raiders who, during my work alone, made at least 3 honest attempts to steal our cargo. So that day, we specially got up early at 5 a.m. in order to prepare the cars in advance and mentally prepare ourselves for the long journey. Since by 5 a.m., they were already waiting for us to unload the goods, we left the base exactly at 7 and 7:15 in the morning, respectively, taking 1 extra hour in reserve for all sorts of unforeseen circumstances. The weather was surprisingly excellent. To be honest, I didn't even expect that the bright sun would shine almost all our way. And the blue cloudless sky is pleasing with its purity. It's literally a winter fairy tale. There's no other way to describe it. The time on the road from Samara to Orenburg flew by unnoticed. We chatted on the radio about all sorts of different things, played words and teased each other, and when this chatter got boring, we simply admired the amazing natural landscape and also looked at the cities encountered. Along the way, there was a small extinct villages of jam. According to our plan, there was a short stop to have a normal snack. We went to the toilet and took a short rest. We often arranged such a stop after covering 50% of the entire route. Since you won't believe it, we need to satisfy physiological need. Sitting in a roadside diner, flipping through the news feed, I first noticed a recent article about the fact that near the village of Sarah, which is located 70 kilometers from Orsk, about a week and a half ago, another major accident occurred on the M5 highway, in which at least 10 people were injured. I was very surprised by this news, so I began to actively scour the internet to find out some more ominous details of that terrible incident. And after a couple of minutes of searching, I suddenly came across really frightening material, which immediately forwarded the reason. As it turned out, the entire region from the Roman Pass is one continuous Bermuda Triangle of the Orenburg region, where heavy snowfall in summer days and the sudden appearance of a warm sun that warms the earth until all the snow melts. The period of sultry frosts is considered completely ordinary, and well, if only the fame of this place limited only to natural objects. This would be great, but alas, the village is also famous for some sad events. The fact is that on the sides of that damned section of the road, there are about 30 monuments to those killed in car accidents, and accidents happen from year to year with an enviable regularity. Of course, such a monstrous number of deaths and weather anomalies led to the emergence of numerous myths associated with the Roman plateau. However, I will say right away that I never believed in mysticism as such, and all these stories invented by all sorts of storytellers that were not deeply on the side. What was more embarrassing was the situation itself, with all these accidents and the fact that no one from the management warned about the danger of this trip. In truth, after everything I read, I instantly had a desire to go back, but the costs of refusal already on the route were too high. Besides, I know that my friend who was sitting at the steering wheel almost from the cradle, he would probably have started making fun of me. So after finishing the meal and leaving the dinner, I reluctantly headed to my truck, already thinking about how to get past that unfortunate section of the track. When I discussed it with my friend at the radio, he scolded me that don't say that, you want to refuse the order and turn back, when we've already driven more than half the way. Apparently, having already reached the cafe and having read that very article that made me a little worried, then no, everything is fine, I'm just a little nervous. My friend didn't notice that from the outside. It all looks very strange. At first, everyone refused to go along this route, and now, in addition, news has surfaced about another accident on this particular section. They were not a coincidence. There were 2 such accidents in just the last year. My friend further replied that you know perfectly well, the road is a high danger zone. Throughout our country, accidents happen almost every day, and not only on the M5. This phenomenon is widespread and unfortunately commonplace. Therefore, there is no need to worry so much about some article. I replied that yes, perhaps you are right. Everything is okay. It's just a pity for those people that they will no longer return home to their families. I completely agree with you, buddy. Okay, let's slow down a little in that section and we will move more slowly. After all, ice is a serious thing. You need to be careful with it. And then once we pass Sarah, we'll restore the pace and move at full speed. Okay, super, we'll do that. Thank you for your understanding. I started moving after with all my might towards the infamous village. You know, I've never been afraid of ice in my life. Usually, I was always worried in the fog. Impenetrable smoke usually creeps out. But that day, after approaching the Roman Pass, for some reason I was completely enveloped in an unreasonable fear. As if I was about to jump with a parachute, and I was still hesitating in every possible way, delaying the inevitable. By the time I reached Kudryashov, this next village on the way to Sarah. After some time, it began to slowly get dark and the landscape around began to involuntarily turn into gloomy tones, making me shiver. But I still continue moving. The closer I got to the private pass, the more often I began to notice all kinds of crosses and monuments on the roadsides, left by the relatives of the victims. With the fog that came from who knows where, the road looked extremely eerie. When I arrived in the middle of a small cemetery, it seemed that I was not driving along at the federal highway at all. Despite such an early hour, there was not a single oncoming car. After that, I was able to instantly catch a loud knocking sound in the engine, which forced me to immediately pull over to the side of the road and stop. I screamed at the walkie-talkie, "Eric, can you hear me? I've got some strange sounds in the engine. I need to check if something serious is happening. Just don't drive too hard here." A strong fog brought in visibility almost zero. I radioed to my colleague, still sitting in the cockpit and waiting for his answer. But imagine my surprise when on the other side, instead of the usual voice, only slight interference was heard on our frequency, and there was deathly silence again. "Eric, how can you hear me?" And again that same unpleasant noise was heard. It seems that someone actively jamming the radio signal in every possible way, not allowing me to get in touch with my friend. I was shivering at that time. Just imagine that you're sitting in a broken car in the middle of some wilderness, with no connection. Unfortunately, there was nothing to do because the Sambo transport did not repair itself, so I bravely and with some degree of apprehension got out of my cab. I slowly headed towards the engine so that I could finally check what caused the engine breakdown. Suddenly, I heard a distinct crunch from somewhere in front, as if someone had carelessly stepped on a branch after coming out of the forest. My heart skipped a beat in surprise and I immediately froze in place. When I saw at the roadside, I saw a silently shining flashlight in the direction where the sound supposedly came from. At first there was nothing special except the same impenetrable fog from the road. I even began to blame the birds, saying they didn't land successfully and thereby provoked my fright. I was still standing in place. A 2-meter thin human figure suddenly appeared to my eyes. Slowly crossing the road, first through the mist and into the running dusk, I thought that it was an ordinary tall man in a gray robe, walking somewhere on his own business. But as soon as I called the stranger, I realized that it would be more accurate to say that he was not a man. She instantly turned her face me and I started looking closer. I saw something that should not exist in our nature at all. The face of the creature from a distance resembled a human face with small nightmarish changes. What frightened him most were the glowing like fireflies eyes that were constantly staring at me with animal interest. As it turned out, it was not the clothes that had a gray tint at all, but the naked skin of the monster, apparently calmly withstanding 30-degree frost. Having fully examined the object of the future hunt, the creatures, standing on all fours, quickly rushed towards me so that I already felt a slight vibration under my feet. This was enough to get out of my stupor and soberly assess the current situation at that moment. I simply didn't have any other reasonable options other than getting into the cabin and locking myself from the inside, because running in such a cold race with this evil spirits would be complete stupidity. Therefore, having climbed inside the truck and clicked both doors into the lock, I immediately lay down on the seat and covered myself with a blanket lying nearby, leaving only a small gap for my eyes to observe everything that was happening. At first, I didn't catch anything suspicious, and even for a second it seemed that she left me alone and went on her way. But as if not so, soon on the door window located near my head, someone tapped with due caution on the glass with a fingernail, as if calling me to negotiations. But to do that, you had to be a complete idiot. After a few seconds, the knocking was repeated again, and literally a minute later the creature dealt a powerful blow to the same body door so that the car staggered slightly. I prayed that the monster could not get to me because it was scary to even imagine what he would do to me, since it is unlikely that such evil spirits would have any good intentions in their heads at the sight of human flesh. A little later, apparently having walked around the cabin on the other side, my field of vision finally appeared. I saw that monster located directly in front of my face. God, I still can't forget her creepy face, frozen in the evil Muscovite's mouth, a pair of black holes instead of a nose, and the above-described glowing eyes of the residential buckets. She greedily peered into every centimeter with all his might, trying to find the food that had disappeared from under his nose. And you know, it's quite possible that the monster could have succeeded if he hadn't been scared away in an instant. Suddenly my friend arrived with his truck. As the headlights of the truck approaches, she instantly scurried back into the wood. I was extremely shocked for some time and lay under the blanket until the end. We went to the destination and delivered the cargo and subsequently get our honestly earned money back. Actually, I used to drink in between my driving. So, whenever I tell this story to someone, that say that it is a fake one. However, a small dent on the door, after a powerful blow from that monster, once again convinced me that everything that happened was clearly not a hallucination. Although, it would seem that this weighty evidence did not help convince my stubborn friend of the veracity of everything previously voiced. I still can't understand what kind of miracle of nature happened on the M5 highway on that fateful evening. But one thing I know for sure, if then the creature had been standing at the window for at least another minute, she would have definitely noticed my face, and who knows, maybe in that case I wouldn't be here anymore.
This video was amazing, but if you want to watch more scary videos, click on the upcoming videos on the screen. See you with more scariest videos.